Let us now program our gameplay controller. Before we start to type anything, we need to type using UnityEngine.ui. So here I'm going to say serialized field, or the first variable that we need is a private game object. This is going to be our pause panel, so a reference to it. Next, we are also going to have a private button. This is going to be our restart game button. We are also going to have a private text, which is also going to be a serialized field. This is going to be our score text, and let me just copy this serialized field. And also we are going to have our pause text. And we are going to have a private int score. And now what we are going to do here in our start function, we are going to say score is equal to, we are going to use our score text. So score text dot text is equal to, and here I'm going to say, or we are going to pass our score. So we can simply type it like this, plus score plus m to indicate meters. This is for our score. And now what we are going to do is we are going to create a coroutine that's going to count our score. So here I'm going to create enumerator, and it's going to be called count score. And inside of this coroutine, I'm simply going to say yield return new wait for seconds 0.6f, and here I'm simply going to say score plus plus, and again simply reset the score here and call this same coroutine. So here again saying start coroutine and passing this coroutine to start it, and copy this line of code and paste it in the start function in order to start counting score immediately when we begin our game. So this is for our score, and I've just noticed that we can also remove this here, and we can simply type score plus m and it will actually work. Now I'm going to create a void function, player died and the game. So this is the function that's going to be called when our player dies. And here in our void on enable and also on disable, we are going to register as a delegate to our player. So if we go back, for our player and game static event. So this is where we are going to register to be the delegate for it. So here I'm going to say player died dot end game plus equals to register for it using our player died end game. And I'm going to copy and paste this line of code, and in our on disable, I'm going to say minus equals of our player died end game. So in this function, what we are going to do, because we are going to use player preferences to store our score, first we are going to check here if our player prefs that has key score. Now this is going to set up our score if we initially don't have any score. So if we have just started the game and we are checking if we have this key, then we don't have it. And then what we are going to do is we are going to say player prefs that set integer score, and we are going to pass 0. This is going to initialize our score to 0 the first time when we run the game. Because as I said, here we are checking if we have this key. If it's the first time that we have played our game, then we don't have this key, so simply set it here. And our set int is going to set the key score, and this is the value. So we know that player preferences are key value pairs. So we give the key and the value. If we want to get the value, which we are going to do here, we need to type the key. So otherwise, if we already have a score, before we save it, or before we save the new score, let's check if we actually have a higher score than the previous one that's saved. So here I'm going to say int score, or I'm going to name it high score. So high score is equal to player prefs dot, and here I'm going to say get int score. So this is going to give us this value here for the score key. So this is how can we get the value. As I said again, player preferences are key value pairs, and this is how we can get them. And now what we are going to do here is we are going to test if our high score, so high score, is less than our current score that we have scored. So this is the score that we are counting throughout whole our game. If the high score that's already stored is less than the score, then we have a new high score. So we can simply set it. So for that here, I'm going to pass score. So for this key, score, and the value, it's going to be score. Again, we are getting the high score from our getInt player preferences, which is the previous score that we have stored. And I'm naming it high score. And we are checking here if our high score is less than our score, then that means that we have a new high score. So simply set it and save it. Here what we're also going to do is we are going to use our pause text, .text, and here we are going to say game over. And we are also going to use our pause panel and we are going to set it to be true. And we are going to use our restart game button. And we're going to say onClick.remove all listeners first. So remove all listeners. And then we are going to add a new listener to it. And also here, what we are going to say time.timescale is equal to, and we are going to set it to 0 in order to stop the game. And here I need to say restart game button dot onClick dot add listener, and here we need to pass a new listener. So here I'm going to create a public void restart game function. And here we are going to pass that function. So this is, well, the syntax for it. So parentheses greater than equal than sign restart game. And this is going to restart our game. And in order to restart the game, what we are going to do is we are going to set the time scale back to 1 again. And we are simply going to call our application load level, and we are going to reload the same level. We can use our application load level or loaded level name, or we can simply type our gameplay. Next here, I'm going to have a public void pause button. So pause button, and here we are simply going to pause our game. And when we pause our game, the time scale is going to be equal to 0. So here we can simply use time scale is equal to 0. And we are going to use our pause text, or we are not, going to use our pause text, but we are going to activate our panel. And we are going to use our restart game button and remove all listeners. And we are going to add a new listener, but it's not going to be restart game, but instead it's going to be public void resume game. So let me just copy it, and we're going to add resume game. And for our resume game, what we are going to do is we are simply going to set the time scale back to 1. And we are going to deactivate our panel again. So our panel set active is equal to false. We are also going to have a public void go to menu, which is going to bring us to our menu. And for it, we are simply going to use our application loaded level name main menu. And before we go in our main menu, we also need to set our scale back to 1. Because when we press the pause button, our time scale is 0. And we need to set it back to 1 again if we go outside of our gameplay scene. The same way, or the same thing we are doing when we restart the game or when we resume our game. Practically, we are done here with our gameplay controller. So now we can go back here and we can select our gameplay controller. We need to attach the pause panel, restart game button, and our two texts. So here we have the pause text and we have the score text. So attach also score text. What we also need to do is we need to select our back to menu button and attach our gameplay controller and select here go to menu function. The same thing for our pause button. Select it here, click plus here to add our gameplay controller, attach it, and select our pause button. And we need to also set our pause panel to be deactivated. We can run our game immediately here, and now we see, notice here in the bottom or top right corner, we have our score. And now if we die, so if our we saw here that our zombie has touched us, we have died, we can restart the game, and here we again see our gameplay. So we have here these minor problems which we can fix simply using our ground here. So let me select the ground, and again it has, well, let me select the ground and set it here at -2. So let me see now if we have these problems. So yeah, now we cannot see our player. So let me just take the player now and set him at -5, so to say, and run the game now. So now we see our player, and we see also our obstacles, and practically we are done with our game. Let me just make sure that when we die and I restart the game, again we don't see our ground. So we will need to correct this. We can go here in our ground. So let me just see our BG scaler. So BG scaler, BG looper. We need to go in our scaler. Transform local scale needs to be -2. And also here it needs to be -2. So now I think that this will fix our problem. Okay, let me now check if our problems are fixed. So now let me just wait for this obstacle to move our player outside of our view. And if I restart the game, again, we have the same problem, excuse me. Let me select our ground and let's say -4 on the Z-axis. So now let me try and see if everything is okay. Let's just wait for this, well, obstacle to move it. Restart the game. Now everything is okay. So we see that we don't have any problems now, and we have our complete game. We can play it, we can run it, and when we touch the zombie, we die the same way as we die if we go off screen. We can click on to restart the game, we can click on the pause, go back to menu, play the game, and we see that everything is working, and we have a nice working, fully functioning infinite runner game.